Leonardo da Vinci is known for many things. Perhaps most intriguing are his many inventions.
You ever wanted to walk on water? Well, Da Vinci did, and he designed shoes to help him do just that.
Da Vinci's secret stash of notebooks proved that he designed some extremely advanced machines.
This will greatly increase your gunner's rate of firepower.
His designs were so far advanced that most of them are still being used today, even after 500 years. Let's look at some of them. Number 1, the canal lock. Who knew that Da Vinci's sketch of a canal lock would lay the foundation of all the canal locks in the future? 4 centuries after Da Vinci passed away, the Panama Canal had to be built. The engineers picked up his sketch and probably thought, hey, this could work. Out came the Milter lock that changed the entire canal system. The design involves 2 V-shaped wooden gates that are tied to hinges on each side.
As the water level rises, the pressure on the gate increases.
The river flows and forces the doors to shut. Since the water level rises on one side, the pressure on this side increases and locks the doors tightly. This makes it a simple but effective canal lock. But what happens when you have to open it? A group of tiny valves in the doors empties the water from one end to the other. But here's what's fascinating. The Panama Canal hosts nearly 80 boats every day, and it works on a system that's based on the Milter lock. If a 500-year-old invention is in the works today, then I'd say that the Milter lock is pretty useful. Number 2, the Wheel of Death. You can call this the Wheel of Death, and I wouldn't say a word. Would you look at that thing go? This is the crossbow machine, stretched to 27 meters in diameter and ready to shoot arrows of fear into the hearts of the enemies. It is quite bulky and only shot 14 rounds out of 16 rounds.
For his machine gun crossbow, it's a pretty insane looking wheel of 16 crossbows said to all fire rapidly in a spinning motion.
Plus, it took the boys nearly 8 minutes to reload the machine, which seems quite the hassle if you see a modern gun today. But here's the thing. This was pretty advanced for its time. The crossbow machine turned out to have 540 rounds per minute. The first ever machine gun did 550 to 600 rounds per minute. This bulky wheel of power came up to the likes of a machine gun, if that isn't something. Number 3, the parachute. Da Vinci's parachute was quite controversial. The fact that he didn't test it only made people more skeptical. Could it still work? The problem was that the parachute had somewhat of an unconventional look. It wasn't rounded. Instead, it had a triangular canopy that raised a lot of questions. Would it have enough air resistance to even float in the sky? That's not all. Da Vinci's sketch showed that the parachute had a wooden frame draped with linen. It looked too flimsy and too bulky to be floating in the air, but nobody could have predicted what happened next. When the year 2000 came, it closed the mouths of all the skeptics. A prototype was made based on Da Vinci's design by Adrian Nichols. He even tested it and found that the design worked. But here's where it gets interesting. He claimed that Da Vinci's parachute offered a much smoother ride than the average parachute. Can you believe it? Number 4, the tank. This war machine created quite a buzz. Part of the mystery was that many people thought that it had a missing piece that Da Vinci kept hidden. The vehicle looks as if the UFO walked on land, but there's a lot going on inside. The tank was designed to barge straight into the battlefield with no error in plain sight. The conical shape was meant to mirror a turtle shell. It was made of wood, but a few metal pieces were to be added at a slanted angle. This was a great feature because it could deflect enemy fire coming straight at the tank. This isn't just a wild claim. This feature was put into use during World War I. There's more. The tank was conveniently fitted with tens of cannons around its perimeter. This way, the heavy armored tank could fire in any direction. But it took 8 men to handle the operations. They all were to be crammed inside, constantly turning cranks to spin the wheels. There was one tiny problem though. The sketch showed that the cranks worked in opposite directions. This would limit the tank's movement in the forward direction. Now, I know what you're thinking. There's no way Da Vinci missed out on something that basic. Experts agree too. They don't think a mastermind like Da Vinci would get caught up in a basic engineering flaw. This is why they think that Da Vinci left an important piece out on purpose to avoid seeing this machine in war. What do you think? Number 5, the advanced catapult. Da Vinci didn't design catapults. They were already pretty common around the region, being used in wars all over. but he added a touch of his own to the device, making it 10 times more advanced. He thought of two designs. One had a single arm, and the other had double arm. I think it is safe to say they both were better than the traditional device. The old catapult took a lot of time to reload and didn't offer the same pace to the stone. You had to use the bow to lift the throwing arm up into the air. Da Vinci's version was better. It had a hand crank that created tension in the throw arm. Plus, a rotating drum stood by to spin the axle, holding the throwing arm. All of this combined produced a larger amount of energy in throwing the balls from one end to another. As a result, the average device was faster than its older version. Number 6. The self-sustaining bridge. This bridge broke a lot of records. One of them was being crowned the world's first ever self-sustaining bridge. Da Vinci was hired to build war machines, and he came up with a tool that was quite handy for soldiers. Without the use of any nails or screws, this bridge could have been put up in a jiffy. All the soldiers needed to do was carry the pieces, and gravity, teamed up with friction, handled the rest for them. But how does it work? Well, when a person stands on top of the bridge, the pressure goes to the pieces bonded together. The heavy weight locks in the pieces and increases the strength of the bridge. It is simple, but brilliant. What's astonishing is that this minimal design works. Even today, the bridge looks shaky, but it manages to hold up pretty bulky weights. Be it humans or cars, the 500-year-old design works for all. Would you dare to cross this bridge? Number 7. The self-propelling cart. This isn't exactly an automobile, but if you take the 15th century into account, this bad boy was probably better than an automobile back then. The first automobile didn't hit the streets until the late 18th century, but Da Vinci had already predicted its design centuries ago. Da Vinci's car neither had seats nor a proper hood. Plus, it wasn't the usual four-wheeler either. It looked more like a cart, but it could be steered and maneuvered, which was a major plus point. Experts claim that it could have traveled nearly 130 feet on its own. How did it work? Da Vinci had powered the car using a spring. So, like a toy, it had to be wound up multiple times to give it a kickstart, but it didn't move like a toy. Many people recreated this design and ended up seeing the sturdy vehicle move on its own. A lot of people claim that Da Vinci's design was an incomplete sketch. We can only ponder what his complete sketch of a self-propelled car would have looked like, but it is safe to say it would have been even better than this revolutionary car design. Number 8. The cam hammer. This is another one of Da Vinci's designs that was going to be used for a century after he passed away. During the Industrial Revolution, this design was a hit. Powered by a simple steam engine, this hammer could hit up to 20 times in a single second. This was nothing short of extraordinary, working to roll sheets of metal for the next 100 years. The hammer was powered by a simple crank sitting on a cam. The crank would be pushed, which would lift the cam up and down. As a result, the hammer would rise and fall, falling at a steady speed. Although it was dependent on the person pushing the crank, the machine turned out to be pretty useful at that time. Even today, it works just fine. The same mechanism has now been automated. Number 9. The giant crossbow. Da Vinci was a fan of instilling fear. This war machine wasn't any different. It didn't do as much damage physically as its massive size crumbled the hearts of the enemy lines. At the time, the crossbow wasn't a rare sight, but Da Vinci's design made it almost invincible. Spanning at a height of 27 yards across, the giant crossbow was nothing south of a machine gun. It had 3 wheels on either side of its frame, allowing the soldiers to easily transport it straight to battle. The crossbow didn't fire arrows, though. It was designed to send fiery stones or even flaming bombs at a blazing speed. How does it work? A soldier loads the crossbow by spinning the crank to pull back the bow. Then, in a simple move, he would send the rocks flying by, knocking out the mallet pin. The first prototype didn't arrive until much later in the 21st century, but it proved to be a hit. The shooting was precise, and the fast-spanning mechanism was something that couldn't be found in the most modern of designs. Da Vinci proved that he was way ahead of his time. Number 10. Controversial, the helicopter. Da Vinci's helicopter was always under debate. Many people thought that its design was best on paper only, but the many prototypes of this device proved the skeptics wrong. The first ever helicopter came out in the 1940s, but its concept had already been finalized by the great man himself centuries ago. The idea was to compress air to lift the vehicle up into the air. That's exactly how modern flying machines work too. His helicopter stretched to nearly 15 feet in diameter. The design included reed.
Conscious of this limitation, Da Vinci envisioned a spring wound by the crank turners, building up and storing energy.
Linen, wire, and nearly 4 men to power up the vehicle. The men would stand in the central platform, spinning the cranks to rotate the shaft. The power would turn the aerial screw, pushing against the air. Eventually, the flying machine would lift up into the air and roam the skies. Modern scientists think that the helicopter wouldn't be able to withstand the weight, but they haven't tested it either. On the other hand, some people have tried to recreate the design, and they believe it can take flight. Number 11, the unique ornithopter. There were many designs for flying machines that Da Vinci hand-sketched, but this one beat them all. The ornithopter is an aircraft that is powered by the flapping of its wings. You can all guess how the inspiration for this device came from the inventor. The machine powers up in 2 different ways, either by an engine or a human. You'd be surprised to know that both methods worked for the ornithopter, but the one powered by humans had everyone's attention. Many prototypes were built to mirror Da Vinci's sketch. They flew at a range of 1,000 to 3,000 feet while staying 65 feet into the air. An engine was later fitted into the same device, turning it even more effective. Most flights were recorded to last for 15 minutes after the launch. While most modern machines have a rotary motion to lift them into the air, this one has a unique approach. The idea was to flap or oscillate the wings, which would ultimately help the vehicle to fly. Researchers believe that the man-powered flight would take an easy win. Number 12, the nightmare scuba suit. Da Vinci didn't just roam into the skies, he also took a dive underwater with his imagined scuba suit. What's interesting is that Da Vinci had several drawings of the diving suit, but none of them were complete. There was only one that looked somewhat finished. Did he do it on purpose? It seems likely. This scuba suit was unlike any other suit you see today. For starters, it was made up of leather. Secondly, it had a face mask, as if you were diving straight into a pool of radiated water. 2 breathing tubes stretch out of the diver's mouth up to the surface of the water. But there's another little thing that you'd never guess. A pee pouch. Hey, nature can call anywhere. But that's not all that's fascinating about this suit. It was meant to work on both land and water. The suit had giant goggles that worked best for underwater vision, but it also had a latch handy for ropes and other weapons. Many people think that this nightmare of a suit carries a list of dirty secrets. Da Vinci never dove into details when sketching this masterpiece. Experts claim that they think it is because the suit might have been dangerous had it been completed. That way, it would have fallen into the wrong hands. So, Da Vinci swept the full sketch under the rugs. Number 13. The powerful machine gun. Da Vinci was a master of art, and he had a bunch of records under his belt. One of them was designing a machine gun that was the first ever auto-firing gun to be invented. Can you imagine that? The gun would automatically be loaded. It would have multiple cannons spread out in the machine gun. This was fairly important.
This will greatly increase your gunner's rate of firepower.
Because Da Vinci wanted it to look visibly scary. Here's how that worked. After the shots were fired, another set of barrels would rotate around and lock themselves in the position of the previous barrels. The cycle keeps rotating, allowing the shooter to fire the next round almost immediately. It wasn't as efficient as the machine guns used today. You can't go for multiple rounds using a single barrel, but the idea is pretty much there in all machine guns. Da Vinci set the theme for all the guns way back in the 15th century. Number 14. The night robot. Who knew robots came as early as the 15th century? Well, if the mastermind behind it is Da Vinci, I guess it seems fair. The robotic knight is one of the finest inventions Da Vinci drew in his notebooks. Built of gears and wheels, pulleys and cables, the robot was more than capable of moving on its own. It could stand, sit, move its head, and even lift up its visor. Don't forget, we aren't talking about the 21st century here. This was 500 years ago, and the man managed to build a robot out of nothing. Granted, he didn't test it, or invent a robot from his sketches, but that was the job of other people. In 2002, Mark Rosheim built a prototype of the robot Knight using a multiple of Da Vinci's sketches. The result was a walking robot that could wave. I'd say the robot Knight was a hit. Rosheim then went ahead and built multiple robots for NASA using the same designs as inspiration. Now that's something. Number 15. The earliest submarine. Da Vinci drew a primitive sketch of a submarine. The vehicle didn't get a lot of praise, but it managed to lay the foundation for each and every submarine that came after. Called the Turtle, this vehicle was the first ever submarine to drop into the depths of the ocean and be used for combat. The submarine had a lot of weight hung around its interior. That, along with a ballast tank at the bottom, helped the submarine to sink into the water. A crank was attached to the submarine that connected with the ballast tank. As the diver pushed the crank, the water went in and out of the tank, allowing him to reach the right depth in the ocean. While this was a simple and effective way for the vehicle to float in water, its combat wasn't the best. It used a drill and gunpowder to get the job done, but unluckily, the drill couldn't get past the incoming ship vessels on the battlefield. This was a total bust, and the submarine had to draw back. But what this submarine managed to do was help engineers build more vehicles that could rise and sink in the ocean. Number 16. The water wheel. Da Vinci was a huge fan of water and how it worked. He was extremely fascinated with it, which is probably why there are hundreds of pages in his notebooks about the flow and ebb of water. Out of that fascination came the water wheel. You can call it a precursor of the modern water turbine, or even the hydroelectric dam, because that man did some solid groundwork. If you come to the machine, the water wheel works in a pretty simple way. The large wheel turns and the flowing water helps power a large number of tools. This simple approach may not seem a lot right now, but it was Da Vinci's hard work that got the wheels rolling in the first place. This was around the time of the Industrial Revolution, so you can imagine how the big guy helped run the mill. Number 17. The sawmill. The sawmill proved to be quite a breakthrough for the industry, laying a trail for the future to power multiple tools. Out of the many sketches came this bad boy that wasn't even practical to build at that time. But Da Vinci was a visionary, and he knew this device would be a showstopper in the near future. Boy, was he right. There are 5 parts to this intricate system. The most important one is the support structure.
A support structure, which is basically going to hold the saw and everything up above the wheel so we can have mechanisms below it.
That holds the water wheel and a saw. Building the water wheel proved to be a difficult task for many, but the magic of it was well worth the effort. Next comes the crank that maneuvers the saw and a sled that moves the wood toward the machine. All in all, it is pretty simple, but nobody thought of it except Da Vinci. Number 18. The water shoes. I have no clue what inspired Da Vinci to draw this sketch, but it was revolutionary. The man managed to show the world how to walk on water. Maybe he wanted to prove one of Jesus's miracles, or he was overcome by his fascination for water. One of those two things helped the guy imagine and drew a sketch that changed how humans think. But waking on the water wasn't an easy feat. The main problem was to have enough traction between the feet and the water to keep the human walking. Da Vinci's shoes turned out to be simple.
You ever wanted to walk on water? Well, Da Vinci did, and he designed shoes to help him do just that.
But effective. Accompanied by poles, the water shoes helped the person to casually go from one end to another by doing nothing more than just walking. Pretty cool, right? Number 19. The water lifting machine. Da Vinci spent more than 40 years studying fluid mechanics. His work proved to be fruitful with seeing devices like the water lift in action. What's interesting about this device is that it came from one of the most complete sketches drawn by Da Vinci. He has put up small notes and detailed the sketch much more intricately than any other innovations. The sheet detail left no question mark on the head of any modern scientist. This makes you wonder if Da Vinci left most of his sketches incomplete on purpose. Number 20. The mechanical lion. Da Vinci might have been a fan of robots because this one comes from the same group of his innovations. In his sketches, there were multiple drawings of a lion robot. If you look closely, you can spot a whole series of mechanical lions in his notebooks. Rumors are that he designed 3 lions, but we only have reports of 2. One of these lions was produced as a spectacle for the French king. The lion would jump on its hind legs and present lilies to the king. The second design was similar, but rumors claim that it was self-powered. The second lion could even move its head and walk a notable distance. Seeing this right now is nothing short of extraordinary. Can you imagine the magic he pulled off in the middle of the 16th century? Remarkable, to say the least. Number 21. The scythed chariot. The scythed chariot was quite the innovative design that Da Vinci drew. Hired to do the job, this chariot was a great tool for war. On each side of the wheel, blades stretching up to 3 feet come out. This was an extremely important detail that Da Vinci sketched. Horses used to back out from the war when they saw a large group staring back at them. But the scythed chariot allowed the soldiers to plow through the enemy lines using the big blades. Number 22. The odometer. The odometer was quite an interesting device. It measured the distance that the vehicle had already traveled. A large disc carrying 48 holes is the star of the show. This worm disc is attached to a worm screw to keep the disc rotating with ease. When the discs are rotated, a ball drops down from the holes after every 4 revolutions hit the timer. That makes a total of 6 meters or 19 feet and 8 inches for one ball to drop. The balls are all collected in a container that can be counted to calculate the total distance traveled by a vehicle. Pretty neat, right? Number 23. The overbalanced wheel. This device is pretty special because it gives the illusion that the disc is permanently in motion. The overbalanced wheel is a wheel with multiple weights fitted in its grooves. As the wheel turns, the weights slide up and down the grooves, moving from the center to the edge and vice versa. This little trick keeps the wheel moving at all times. Number 24. The lathe. This is a lathe, but this device almost works the same way as a modern sewing machine. The lathe has 3 main parts: the treadle, the crank, and the flying wheel. The crank joins the treadle and the flying wheel. This one feature helped in the design of many modern machines. But how does it work? The crank provides constant rotation, and the flying wheel keeps the crank running over its dead spot. The treadle has to be pedaled up and down by the user. The more you pedal, the more the wheel rotates. This is where the old guy bagged the win. Most lathes didn't offer a continuous rotation with a simple operation. The crazy thing is that it still works. Number 25. The swinging bridge. Another bridge that made Da Vinci famous was the swinging bridge. It is safe to say that this one will blow your mind too. The bridge could be turned around across a moat or a river to help the soldiers cross onto the other side. It had wheels and a pulley system to move the bridge without any hassle. To balance the weight, the bridge had a counterweight tank. This simple feature upgraded the bridge to a novel design. Would you walk on this bridge? That's all, folks. If you enjoyed this video, smash the like button and make sure you subscribe to the channel. Thanks for watching, and goodbye.